Okay, here we go. Warhammer Underworlds, Rival of the Mirrored City. To be fair, we all know what's in these boxes. We've got 4 warbands along with their new Rivals decks and all the other normal stuff you'd expect for warband releases from Underworlds. I'm honestly quite surprised to be bringing this to you. I, like everyone else, tried to pre-order this on the day it went out for pre-order last Saturday, and it sold out everywhere in minutes. But very randomly, on the Thursday before release, Element Games come up with a whole bunch of them ready for pre-order. I don't know if they got allocated more stock or something else had happened, but they all turned up late, and yeah, I managed to snag one. So let's have a quick look through this. So what have we got? We have 4 warbands. Molog's Mob. That one has been in sought after for some time, because obviously, well, they're all out of print anyway, but I know that Molog's Mob has been very sought after recently. We've got Spikeclaw's Swarm. We have the Thorns of the Bri Queen, and we have Zarag's Gits. Now, I won't be surprised by what I see in this. I did actually open the box briefly. I haven't actually looked at anything that was in it, but I just had to have a quick check. But no one will be surprised by what we get in here. So we have our assembly instructions. We have our 4 different warbands. So that's the Briars. Sorry, I've lost my mind already. The Thorns of the Bri Queen, Spikeclaw's Swarm, Zarag's Gits, and Molog's Mob. And then we get in here, these are all of our cards and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to review this as one individual release because it's not really worth it, because I can't see it being available for much longer. But what I will do is I will individually go through the 4 different decks. Now, what we've got here is basically a deck for each individual warband, along with its own Rivals deck. So it won't be any kind of so these Rivals decks, they're not universal. They can't be used for everyone. These are simply just for these specific warbands. So if you're intending to pick this up just to get Rivals decks out of it for use with other warbands, you can't, basically. So what's this one? Thorns of the Bri Queen. We get, as you'd expect, all of the different unit cards. We get the 12 objective cards. So everything's changed from when they were out previously. These aren't just reprints. This is all new stuff. And then we get our 10 Gambit cards and 10 upgrade cards. Now, so basically it's the same for every single warband. There'll be nothing changed. But yeah, that is basically what we get in the box. Short but sweet, really, but interesting, to be fair, that they're bringing back some of the older warbands, which are very difficult to play at the moment in their current form. So I believe that the Spikeclaw's Swarm is a pretty robust warband for what we've got here. So standard, if we just look at these warbands, this is a 5-man warband. 3 of them have 2 wounds, 1 has 3 and 1 has 4. That's on their non-inspired side. And yeah, they're actually the same on both sides. But I know that for the Skaven, they all have terrific movement. They're all movement 5. Spikeclaw, so 2 damage, 2 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage. Inspired, 2 and 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so not particularly hard hitting, but that movement is everything. and I'm assuming that it will have objective cards to match. Let's have a brief look. So, that one is for inspiring. That's for having surviving minions in an end phase. That's for having just surviving units in general. It's about having units in enemy territory. That's using your leader to take someone out of action. This is quite a difficult one to achieve. This is about 2 or more friendly fighters taken out of action in the preceding action phase, and 1 or more enemy fighters was taken out in the preceding action phase. That's worth 2. That's for taking someone out of action. That's for if a inspired minion is taken out of action. Right, so this is the 3 value one. Scoreless in end phase. If each surviving friendly fighter is inspired, at least 1. And there are 1 or fewer surviving enemy fighters in each enemy warband. It's quite difficult to achieve that one. I know that the ones that are worth 3 they're going to be slightly more difficult, but there's much easier ones out there. So this is making sure everything's inspired, and your opponent, if it's a 2-player game, well, however many it is, there's fewer than 1 surviving enemy fighter, so that's difficult to achieve. This one's standing out. Scoreless immediately after a friendly minion makes a successful attack action. So a lot of these very easy to achieve. Right, the perfect plan. Scoreless in an end phase if a friendly Scritch is taken out of action. A surviving friendly Kirk is inspired. These look pretty straightforward to get. And finally, the Vermintide. Scoreless in end phase if there are 1 or more surviving friendly fighters in enemy territory. I have to say that going through these, the big one, the objective that was worth 3 points seems quite difficult to achieve. The rest seem very straightforward. So in terms of all of the objectives, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, which is good. 18 available glory from these cards. Like I say, most of them very much achievable. So very good. I won't go through the gambits and ploys. I'll review each one of these separately. Let's quickly just do that for all of the warbands. So as we are, it's pretty straightforward. So Thorns of the Bri Queen. Now Thorns of the Bri Queen has generally been a pretty wounds heavy warband. So the Bri Queen has 4. So these are standard side. We've got 4 wounds, 4, 3, 2, 2, 2, 2. So all, you know, a couple of 4s and a 3. That ain't bad. I wonder I don't believe they change. Yeah, so no more wounds granted for going inspired. But yeah, that's generally pretty good in terms of wounds dealt out. 2, 2, 2, 1. 2 uninspired, 1, 2 uninspired, 1, and 1. So just from a base stats perspective, seems pretty good. Let's check out the objectives. Okay. Bypass the guards. After a friendly fighter makes a move action, which move through 1 or more hexes that contain the enemy fighter. Okay, fine. So that's 1. That's if 2 or more fighters become inspired in the same step. Pretty straightforward. 1 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to an enemy fighter. A bit easy. This one's worth 2. Scoreless in an end phase if each surviving enemy fighter is adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters. that can be straightforward. Let's quickly check something in terms of movement. 3 3 3 3 3 3 3. Right, okay, lots of movement for all of those. So that's very achievable for 2 points, depending on who your enemy is. But yeah, I think that's more than achievable for most of the time. Foreboding inevitability. Scoreless in end phase if there are one or fewer surviving enemy fighters from each enemy warband. Okay, slightly tougher. Reclaim turf. Scoreless in end phase if your warband holds 3 or more objectives, and your warband holds 1 or more objectives in no one's and/or enemy territory. All right, that's fairly straightforward. You can do it in your own half pretty easily. You only need to get 1 in the opponent, so that's pretty good. Scores to settle. Score this immediately after the second or subsequent successful attack action made by friendly minions in this phase, or an activation step in your warband holds each objective in enemy territory. All right, okay, but it must be at least 1. That could be fairly straightforward. Again, warband with decent movement and plenty of models. Sorcerer Syndicate. Score this immediately after damage dealt by a friendly wizard took an enemy fighter of action. That's worth 1 point. In terms of wizards, how many do we have? Okay, we've got 2 wizards in there, so yeah, pretty achievable. Scores in end phase if your warband holds 1 or more objectives and your warband holds each objective in 1 or more territories. Okay, that's for 1. Fairly straightforward. You could probably do that turn 1. These are our streets. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds an objective whose value is odd and an objective whose value is even, or your warband took out an enemy fighter on an objective out of action in the preceding action phase. Straightforward, I think. Throat cutters. Score this immediately after an enemy fighter was taken out of action if that fighter was inspired, or if that fighter was on a starting hex in enemy territory. Okay, that could be straightforward. And finally, the Tide of Death. This one's worth 2. Score in the end phase if your warband holds more objectives than each other warband. Okay, more than doable. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Potential glory from there. But holding objectives, taking enemies out of action, holding objectives, enemy out of action, objective, reducing your enemy warband, adjacency to other fighters, becoming inspired, and general movement. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards for objective holding. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points from there. 4 points available for taking enemies out of action. 3 different objectives. 2 for having adjacency, worth 3 glory. 1 for movement, going through enemy hexes, and then 1 for being inspired for 1 point. All right, so again, all of that very straightforward, pretty simple to use. Okay, right, so that's the Thorns of the Bri Queen. We'll do Zarag next, and then Molog's Mob. Now, Zarag has always been interesting to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fighters, which sounds great, but when you consider you only get 5 activations in each cycle, that's not a lot. Let's go through the objectives. No, let's not go through the objectives. Right, okay. So, Zarag has 3 wounds, does 2 damage or 1 at range 3. Those stats don't increase when he comes inspired, he just gets extra movement. Snirk Sour Tongue, 3 wounds, does 3 damage with his ball and chain, which is pretty special. When he's inspired, this fighter cannot be on guard or make actions other than wreck. All right, yeah. I'll go through this on his separate, on Zarag's Git's separate review, but this one's a potential real headache. Scatter 4 from this fighter's hex and push this fighter 3 hexes along the chain. If you would push this fighter into an occupied hex, deal 1 damage to the other fighter, then push the one fighter 1 hex further than this fighter. So, yeah, there's more to that, but yeah, pretty special to be fair. Yeah, we've got Squig Herder. Again, 3 wounds, does 2 damage. Prog Danetta. 2 wounds, 1 damage. But range 3. Another range 3, 2 wounds, 1 damage. Another range 3, 2 wounds, 1 damage. Another range 3, 2 and 1. Right. Range 1 does 2 damage. There's 2 wounds, and then the last squig, 2 and 2 again. Very cool. Right, now let's have a look at the objectives. Right, Chomp. Score this immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by damage dealt by a friendly squig. Okay. Score this in phase if your warband holds each objective in your territory. When you score this, gain 2 additional glory points if your warband holds each objective in enemy territory, and or gain 1 additional glory point if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in no one's territory. All right, so that's potentially worth up to 4. Score this in end phase when your warband holds each objective in your territory. When you score this, gain 2 additional glory points if your warband holds each objective in enemy territory, so potentially 4. And or gain 1 additional glory point if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in no one's territory, so potentially 5 glory for that. That's crazy, right? So that's territory. Score this in end phase if your warband holds 3 or more objectives. Sorry, that's objectives and territory. Another one for territory and objectives, so that's another 2 points. Score this in end phase if 5 or more friendly fighters each have 1 or more move and or charge token. Okay, so that's for movement. Score this immediately after an enemy fighter with 2 or more upgrades is taken out of action. So that's for that. Score this immediately after a fighter with the highest wounds characteristic or is tied with the highest wounds characteristic on the battlefield is taken out of action. So it's taken out of action, there's 1 there. Obliterated. Score this immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by damage dealt by a friendly snurk, so that's damage. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's successful attack action if that fighter was supported by 2 or more friendly fighters, which is easy to do because there's so many damn models on the board. Squalid Lair. Score this in an end phase if there are no enemy fighters in your territory. If you score this in the 3rd end phase, gain 1 additional glory points. That's 1, potentially 2. Score this immediately after your warband's third or subsequent range 3 attack. So that's for attacks. 3 attacks in the same phase. Survival of the Gittiest. Score this in an end phase if there are 5 or more surviving friendly fighters. If you score this in the third end phase where you gave 1 additional glory point. So that is 1, potentially 2. And finally, score this in end phase if one or more enemy fighters are each adjacent to 2 or more friendly fighters. It's slightly more difficult to do depending on who you're up against, but that's worth 1. And that is, yeah, we'll keep that with the movement on as well. So, in terms of taking people out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different objectives. That's half your objectives, worth 6, potentially 7. These ones for territory, they are worth 5, potentially 8. That one is worth potentially 5 glory, which is crazy. So yeah, if you can trigger that at the right time, gets everywhere, that is a potential game winner. That is for having charge and move tokens. That one is for doing range 3 attacks, 3 in the same phase. That's about being adjacent to other fighters. And that is for having lots of friendly fighters available. Okay, so this lot, see how many glory it's worth in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 16 there, plus a potential 4 more, depending on how you go about it. So potentially up to 20, which is very good, obviously. Okay, then finally, Mollog's Mob. We'll have a look at the models in a minute, but there's nothing new there, so we'll just have a very brief look at that. Okay, so 4 fighters. So Mollog has 3 movement and 6 wounds, which is really, really cool. He has the makeshift club, which can do 3 damage, or the whirling club, which has scything, which can do 2 damage. The bat squig, 2 wounds. Hang on a second, let's have a quick look. So yeah, when he inspires, when Mollog inspires, doesn't get any more wounds or anything, but that makeshift club goes up to 4 damage. So that is taking out sort of 90% of all of the enemies in the game in 1 hit. But obviously his backup is somewhat limited. So Bat Squig has 2 wounds, and he has a Toothy Maw, which does 1 damage. That increases to 2 damage when he's inspired. The Spite Shroom, 2 wounds, 1 damage, increases to 2 when inspired. And the Stalag Squig, no movement, saves with, you've got your rolls 2 to going for shields for his saving, 2 wounds, which doesn't increase, but he does get rock more when he's inspired. But yeah, looks pretty good. It's all about Mollog here, all about Mollog. Keep him alive and keep him fighting, and you're going to do well. If you can keep him alive. Right, okay, so 12 objectives. Let's have a quick count up first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. But of course, expect him to take out a few fighters as well. So let's have a look. Okay, you're sure it's asleep? A friendly score this in an end phase if a friendly Mollog made no super actions in the preceding action phase, and that Mollog is in enemy territory. Okay. I suppose, do you know what? I haven't played with Mollog before. I suppose you've got to get him into a fight, but I'm assuming you get pretty isolated pretty quickly if he's out there on his own. If you charge him in turn 1, Yeah, so he doesn't get to attack for the rest of the round. It's going to be a bit of a nightmare. Okay. Utter Carnage. Score this in end phase if 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action, or there are 1 or fewer surviving enemy fighters. Okay, fair enough. 2 points for that. So that's for taking people out. Okay, score this immediately after an activation step if a surviving friendly Mollog is inspired. And let's have a look. Right, it says a surviving friendly Mollog. Only Mollog is a Mollog, obviously. Score this immediately after an activation step if a surviving friendly Mollog is inspired, and there are 3 surviving friendly minions. Right, so no one's dead yet, so hopefully you'll pull this out first round. Okay. So that's for staying alive. Score this in an end phase. So this is the big one, 3 points. Score this in an end phase if your warband took 3 or more enemy fighters out of action in the preceding action phase, or a friendly Mollog is the only fighter in enemy territory. All right, so that's doable. That is doable. So if you imagine, if you start a phase in enemy territory and you inspire Mollog, and he's doing 2 or 4 wounds on each attack. Only 4 if you can get them in range. And it is range 2, which is good. When he's inspired, well, it's range 2 anyway. Yeah, that's doable. That is doable. Okay, so that's that. Score this in an end phase if there are no enemy fighters in your territory. So that's a territory one. Score it immediately if an enemy fighter was taken out of action by damage that was not dealt by a friendly Mollog. 1. Score in an end phase if there are no enemy fighters within 2 hexes of a surviving friendly Mollog. When you score this, if a friendly Mollog make 1 or more successful range 1 or 2 attack actions in the previous action phase. Okay, so that's kind of one or the other, so stick actually with them. Just too easy. Score this immediately after a turn in which 2 or more enemy fighters were dealt damage. Okay, so that's for damaging. Score this in an end phase if there are 1 or more friendly surviving minions. 1 or more of those minions are not adjacent to a friendly fighter. Okay, so that is about placement. Yep. Get got. Score this immediately after a friendly minion made a successful attack action. That's attacking. Score this immediately if your warband dealt precisely enough damage to take an enemy fighter out of action. And then finally block the entrance for 1 point. Score this immediately after an opponent's activation step if a friendly Mollog holds an objective in enemy territory and there are no enemy fighters adjacent to that Mollog. Okay, so that's objectives. Right, so a good range there. Like I say, there's only 15 points available, but it is over a range of different things. I've noticed actually that the Tooth and Claw Rivals deck, which is getting cycled out with the release of Wintermoor, I've noticed that very, very similar cards are peppered throughout these warbands. So it's interesting to see some of that stuff staying, albeit in a different way. But that is it really. Let's have a brief look at the sprues. And I know that these sprues are quite old and that kind of thing, but interesting to look at anyway. So that is Mollog's Mob. A lot of stuff going on there. Like I say, it's all about Mollog really. Can't really see that because how dark the sprue is. But very cool. So I'll be playing with these warbands on Thursday. I don't know if I'll get a chance to try them all out. Zarbag's Git. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bases, but 10 cards. Oh, I'll work that out. the Spike Claw Swarm. I'm going to paint these in Spartan colours. Not Spartan in Halo, I mean Spartan. Spartans is in the 300 Greek mythology. And then the Thorns of the Bri Queen. Very cool indeed. So yeah, that is Rivals of the Mirrored City. Very, very cool, to be fair. If you can get it, I think it looks great. Obviously, I haven't played these yet. I do get the feeling that Spike Claw Swarm looks very competitive. Mollog, I think if you play him right, is going to be right up there as well. He was always strong anyway. And the other ones, they don't look like fools. So, yeah, be interesting to see where it goes with these guys. I've seen these boxes available on eBay for ridiculous prices. Do not feed the scalpers. I have seen some of the warbands going individually for the price of a normal warband. It's kind of the 20 odd quid mark. That's worth it if you don't want to pick them all up. But yeah, hopefully this will get some form of reprint or something and become more regularly available. I dare say that this can be counted as a success from Games Workshop. Therefore, I'm almost positive there will be loads of different boxes like this coming out over the next year or so, bringing back kind of defunct warbands and that kind of thing. But that's it. Rivals of the Mirrored City. For me, it looks very good. I'll be back to do individual reviews of the warband later. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you all later.